Welcome, Jason. We are really excited to have you, the brand SERP guy himself,
Thank you
as
very
one
much.
of our special panel speakers for this amazing next generation marketing series. And let's start with how you have uh, been into this role, how you came to know as the brand SERP guy, how you started from up to 10, and how has been your journey so far.
Well, the first thing to explain is what is up to 10. Up to 10 is a website for children aged up to 10, which is the brilliant name we found with my ex-wife, Veronique. And I played the role of a blue dog in a cartoon on the website Up to 10. And Up to 10 and the blue dog delivered 1 billion page views in 2007. So it was a huge success. We were competing with Disney, we were competing with PBS and the BBC. And then one day, it all went horribly wrong for business reasons that are very boring. And I had to find a new job. And so I converted myself into a digital marketer. But the problem was that when I pitched for work, people would search my name and it said at the top, Jason Barnard is a cartoon blue dog. And when they saw that, they didn't sign the contract because they thought, I'm not going to give my digital marketing strategy to a cartoon blue dog. So my immediate reaction was, well, that Google result for my name is my Google business card. And whether I like it or not, everybody's looking at it before they do business with me. So I set about changing Google's perspective of me and its presentation of me. So instead of saying Jason Barnard is a cartoon blue dog, it says Jason Barnard is a professional, authoritative, and hugely credible digital marketer. And that's how I became obsessed by the search engine results page for your brand name or your personal name on Google. And it is the single most important thing about your branding or your personal branding strategy. And I would argue for corporations, it's where you should start with your entire digital marketing strategy.
That's very interesting, how this came out. So, like, really going to the root cause, finding that problem, facing it yourself, and then trying to solve it, and then excelling in that. Very, very interesting. For
Which
our
makes me think that actually, sorry, our ideal client is a company or a person who's being misrepresented by Google, and not necessarily online reputation management, i.e., we're not necessarily looking at something that's negative about you. It's simply not representing you and your brand the way that you want to. You've spent a fortune if you're a company and a lot of thought and effort and time as a person figuring out what your brand narrative is. You push it out online on all these different platforms and then Google gets it wrong. It's up to you to correct it. And that's what we do at Kalicube every day, all day, is we correct Google's perception and representation of brands and people.
Yeah, I think you covered it briefly, but for our viewers who are not familiar with what's brand SERP and what's a knowledge panel, maybe you can help explain in simple words that everyone gets to know about what
Yep.
exactly you are doing at Kalicube and what has been your recognition about.
A SERP, S-E-R-P, is a search engine results page. So that's the result you see on Google when you search on Google or on Bing for that matter. And a brand SERP is the search engine results page for a search on a brand name, a company name, a personal name. So the brand SERP is very simple. When somebody is researching you or navigating to your website, they will search your name on Google. That is your brand SERP and it's your Google business card. Then the knowledge panel is the information box on the right-hand side when you search on desktop. Some people have it, some brands have it, some companies have it, and some don't. And I would argue that having the knowledge is vitally important because that knowledge panel is Google's understanding and representation of the facts about your company, your brand, or you as a person. And when it understands you, it can better push you up the search engine results for other keywords because it knows who you are, it knows who you serve, and it knows what you can offer them, and it knows that you're credible.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention here, which I came to know watching your videos and information about you, that you don't really have to be a famous person to have a knowledge panel. Can you explain briefly how that works?
Yeah, I think people have become obsessed with notability, being famous, and they think, well, I need to be famous to have a knowledge panel. And often they think, I need Wikipedia to have a knowledge panel. And there are a couple of things there. Number one is Wikipedia is an encyclopedia for humans. And I believe I've been citing 15 million articles, but it's actually only got 6 million articles in it. It's tiny because Google's knowledge has got something in the region of 400 billion facts in it. So Google doesn't care about notability, it cares about understanding. So it's trying to understand everybody and everything, and that's a huge task, obviously, and 400 billion is a drop in the ocean. So from that perspective, number one, you don't need Wikipedia because you can see that 6 million and 400 billion doesn't add up.
Yeah.
So a lot of the information in Google's knowledge graph and in its knowledge panels comes from somewhere else than Wikipedia. So you need to be notable to be in Wikipedia. You don't need to be notable to have a knowledge panel on Google. And the only thing it needs is that you're consistent and clear across all your digital ecosystem and that it understands where your entity lives. So for example, your own website, if you're a person, or your company website, if you're a company, Google needs to confidently understand that that is the correct place to go for information about you from you. And it has to be convinced that you're trustworthy as a source of information about yourself, i.e. you don't lie. Once you've got that, you can build a knowledge panel. Anybody can build one.
That explains quite nicely. Which brings me to our next question, like how have you seen marketing on Google evolve over time? If it has evolved, are the basics still the same and things have developed, or there have been pragmatic shifts in how SERP works on Google or how marketing works in Google for the last, say, 15 years?
Oh, I can do better than 15. I can do 25 years.
Since the okay.
I started in 1998, and that was when
Yeah.
you just counted words in the page. And Google was revolutionary to say, well, we might start counting links too. So I started in 1998 when Google was incorporated, the same year, literally 2 months after they were incorporated. I launched my website, my company. And so I've grown up with Google on the web, and Google's grown up with me. So we're kind of partners in crime, as it were, but Google doesn't know it, obviously, because Google's big and it's a corporation, whereas I'm a lovely human being. And so we started off with the 10 blue links. The tactics and the strategies were very simplistic, counting words, calculating the ratio of words on the page. And then from about 2012, we got universal search, which included things like videos and images. And then the knowledge panel came along. And we then needed to start thinking not just about web pages with text, but also video and images and how Google would rank those and insert them into the content. And there's a whole concept called Darwinism in search, which is survival of the fittest. And I created the approach. And if you search for Darwinism in search, you will find articles by me that explain how all these different elements find their place on the search engine results page. And therefore, how you can start to market better on Google, because marketing on Google is now multimedia. So we've gone from pure text, 10 blue links, to multimedia from multiple sources. So you need a healthy digital ecosystem, a healthy website, and multimedia content.
Interesting. Yeah. Like previously things were pretty much text-based, but now there's so much more than just text. So yeah, that has brought a huge shift. And again, like then in today's time, what would be the top things, three, if you can rank, in your opinion, for a brand to improve its marketing or SEO ranking or search ranking on Google? In today's time, what would you recommend?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what you shouldn't do first, and then I'll tell you what you should do.
That helps.
What you shouldn't do is look for top of funnel keywords and try to rank for them. So things like red shoes, very vague, but it's got huge search volume. So a lot of people focus on that. You want to niche down and you want to start with your brand. So the first thing you do for your digital strategy and your SEO strategy is Google your own brand name. And before you do it, think, what do I expect to see? And write a list. Then Google the name and write what you do see, and then write a list of what you want to change. And you'll see that it's hugely insightful. And then you can start building out your digital strategy by improving that brand SERP, the search engine results page for your brand. We call this the Kalicube process. And you can just start at the top, improve your website, improve whatever social media channels are ranking, improve the videos if you've got video boxes, and you move slowly through the whole thing with this prioritized list that Google has provided you with, which is Google's opinion of the world's opinion of you. And so what you're doing by correcting your brand SERP, the search engine results page for your brand, is correcting your own digital ecosystem, which means correcting what you're doing when you're standing in front of your audiences on all of these different platforms from top to bottom of funnel. And as you do that, what you will see is the multiple channels that you then optimize will start to drive more business and revenue for your company without SEO. But then what will happen is branded searches will increase. And what we've seen with our clients is when brand searches increase, the general SEO performances go up. And we now have clients who improved relatively little in terms of SEO the first year, but got a lot more branded searches, who are now seeing 300% growth in non-branded organic traffic from Google. So it's really this train of the brand. The brand is the train, the locomotive that pulls the SEO carriages. I don't know where that analogy came from, but we've got a train and it's got this big engine at the front, and that's your brand. And all the carriages behind you are the SEO, and you just pull that along. Whereas a lot of SEOs and a lot of companies put the carriages in front of the train, they try to push them. And that doesn't work very well.
That's a very good analogy. And it's also important to know that you should not put contradictory things about your brand. Like if some place you have put something and the other place you have put something else, I think you are creating a conflict for Google's intelligence, or I should say in its understanding.
That's exactly it. And there are two levels here. Number one is Google is going to be confused, but also your audience is going to be confused, because as they come down the funnel through all these different channels and you get these different touch points, they're seeing a different brand narrative. So what we do at Kalicube for our clients is clean that digital ecosystem up, make the brand narrative completely consistent across all the channels, educate Google, improve your funnel, drive revenue through the people who are seeing this funnel in the first place, and then drive revenue through Google, because Google's understood who you are, what you do, which audience you serve, so you improve your SEO performance across the board. It's really simple.
Yeah, interesting. What are the hardships or the pain points you face while working with clients in today's term? And have there been very different hardships previously that really got resolved with how technology evolved, and what are your pain points now today?
Yeah, my pain point with clients has always been the same, is they want lots of huge amounts of growth in traffic very, very quickly. And when you deliver that, they then want more and more and more and more. And it becomes this thing that they feel is due to them, that is owed to them. And you end up in this terrible, terrible conflict with the client and saying, you can't just expect this to keep growing and growing and growing and growing. And you can't expect it to be a switch that I flip and it works. Because if it was like that, everybody would be doing it.
Yeah.
So it would never work, because if everyone was doing the same thing and it would theoretically work, then everybody's on the same playing field. So please forget the idea of you flip a switch, the whole thing kicks off. Next month, you get 10% more traffic. And every month thereafter, you're always going to get 10 or 20% more traffic. Convincing clients that isn't the case is hugely difficult. Convincing them to focus on brand first can be very difficult, especially when they're companies who have grown up online. The more traditional companies are much more interested in brand than the newer companies, if we like. So we're trying to demonstrate, we are demonstrating with our own clients that, once again, this growth in branded search pulls the SEO train. And to get the growth in the branded search, you need to develop your digital ecosystem, which is very good for your multi-channel marketing. So it's a really holistic strategy that's both simple and incredibly powerful. But convincing people to have that patience is very difficult, because obviously everybody you talk to in a company has a stakeholder they need to impress, whether it's the CEO or the CEO to the shareholders and so on and so forth. And when people come to us, generally speaking, their pain point is that they've been burnt by multiple digital marketing agencies who promise a lot and deliver very little. And they come to us because they finally realize that if you build on brand, it's stable and it's sensible, solid business. And if you go for those really, really popular keywords, but very ambiguous at the top of the funnel, like red shoes, which is very tempting, it's not going to work out. And really building from your brand and building that train with the carriages behind it is the way to move forwards. Not only is it the way to move forwards today, but it's exactly what's going to feed and work in the new epoch of generative AI with Bing Chat, Google Search Generative Experience, Gemini, and all these other things that we're talking about, Bard, and so on and so forth. And if you drive your train with brand first, you will perform in these new platforms.
Interesting. Yeah. And like you mentioned, Bard and the new generative technologies that are coming up. So, and this has exploded in the last year. There's a flood of machine generated text in the market nowadays. Even I can now differentiate on LinkedIn. There are like so many posts, even very similar posts on one LinkedIn post where there are multiple comments, and you can clearly identify all these comments have been generated by machines. And people just copy and paste them, not realizing how stupid it looks like. So there's a flood of machine generated text in the market. How do you see it impacting brand SERP in today's time? And maybe Google evolves with time. By maybe 2 years down the line, how will that landscape change of having machine generated text in your brand SEO?
Which is a lovely question. One thing that is really interesting is the Google updates very rarely impact the brand SERP very much.
Oh.
Because brand SERPs, once you've built them, they're stable. And even if somebody isn't looking after their brand SERP, it isn't going to change drastically, because the rankings of brand SERPs are based on a different logic than the rankings in the rest of Google. So generally speaking, when there's a Google update, none of our clients are ever affected on the brand SERP side, and they're very rarely affected on the ranking side because of the train analogy I gave earlier. The thing about AI-generated text is, because the brand SERP is just 10 results in the knowledge panel, it's never going to get drowned by AI. So it's not going to be a problem. However, one thing that did strike me, and it was this morning, is we have a Kalicube, which is basically a chatbot trained on 2 million words of our own content. So it speaks like us, or it writes like us, and it says what we would have said.
Nice.
And I wrote an article using Kalicube, and I very lazily just handed it over to Jean-Marie. And Jean-Marie this morning said, I'm really struggling with this article because it's so boring. Now, number one, it takes courage to say to your boss that their article is boring. But number two, it indicates very clearly that as a human being, she immediately spotted that it didn't have my personality, even though it's trained on my own words. And so the end of that discussion was, please, Jean-Marie, can you add some sparkle? So she's going to go in and add some sparkle. And that, for me, is hugely insightful. And the other thing that struck me is, it didn't strike me, actually. It struck Teodora Petkova, who was on our Kalicube Tuesdays show. And she asked me in the middle of the show live, was the description for this show written by AI? And I had to say, yes, it was. And how did she know? She said it was very well written, and we had corrected it by hand, so it wasn't immediately obvious from the boring and the sparkling perspective. But she said it's overpromised. It's promised things that we're not even going to talk about, because it hasn't understood the constraints of our particular conversation. It doesn't understand us and what we're going to talk about. And that's hugely insightful as well, because the machine doesn't understand us as human beings So it can't replicate the relationship that we know we're going to have. It can just guess at what we might be saying based on what is generally said online. And that's the third point. AI is simply repeating what is the most probable. So therefore, it's repeating stupidly what it's already heard and isn't going to create anything new. And it's going to tend to repeat itself and repeat us. And we're going to end up with an incredibly boring world. So people who are original and have original thought and say original things in original manners are going to be hugely popular in a couple of years' time.
Yeah. I bumped into an article or a video recently, which was about how you can give ChatGPT or a machine text-based model how your style of writing. Let's say you feed it 2,000 emails, how you write emails, and then it's able to learn your style and then mass shoot out 2,000 emails which are personalized in your language to every single client. Maybe that's something which will evolve or come very soon by early next year. But I think those are like
Yep.
interesting improvements as compared to the mechanical, boring text that's being generated nowadays.
But then if you take that and imagine that Calibot, which is our trained
Mm-hmm.
bot, we've trained it like you just suggested,
Oh,
2
interesting.
million words, and it
Yeah.
still can't get it sparkling and interesting. But it's saying the right things, but it just doesn't have a personality. So as you say, that's something that will come. And in fact, we now have 2 people on the team working on this, Leo and Damri, and they're working to try to give it more focus, more accuracy, and more of our personality. So we're working really hard to create a bot that can emulate us. And that will be huge, and that will be really interesting. But we will never leave the human out of the loop. The
Absolutely.
human always needs to double check and always needs to correct and rectify and feed that back into the machine so it learns, and it will get better and better, which is wonderful.
Would you like to introduce like the amazing stuff you're doing with WordLift? And
Yeah,
how
we
that's
work a great
in
deal
picture.
with WordLift. They work on knowledge graphs internally for your website and your company. So they will take your website and they will create a knowledge graph using schema markup, and it's hugely geeky, but they've created a system where anybody can do it. And the interesting thing there is they can do it at scale. And we at Kalicube work alongside them because we work on the cornerstone entities, which is the company, the founder, potentially the main products. And we optimize the entire digital ecosystem to build a digital strategy across the entire web. We feed the information that we've created into Google's knowledge graph to get the knowledge panel that we mentioned earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of WordLift's knowledge graph, which is internal, hooks on to what we've already taught Google. And Google will say, well, I understand the company, I understand the CEO, I understand the different authors. Now I can look into WordLift's knowledge graph for this website, and I can understand all of these different details, the different products, the different pages, the different topics. So what then happens is Google gets a hook into the company through the company founder or the company CEO and the company itself, and then looks inside and sees WordLift's amazing world of knowledge graph and goes, that makes total sense. And that's where you win the game.
Nice. That's interesting. Yeah. Um, Quite insightful. And I would like to mention our viewers that if you want to know more about brand SERP for your business, Jason has published an amazing book, The Fundamentals of Brand SERPs for Business. So anyone looking to boost their brand SERP on Google, I would highly recommend to check it out or ping Jason on LinkedIn.
Brilliant.
So last segment of the interview, like looking ahead, what do you believe are the biggest opportunities and challenges in the marketing industry or the SEO industry?
Well, the biggest challenge is going to be generative AI, both in terms of how we produce content, but also how we market ourselves through the search engines, which are going to become assistive engines. And so the biggest challenge is going to be to adapt our SEO strategies and our digital strategies to fit into the generative AI world of these search engines. And when they become assistive engines, what happens is that you start a conversation with the machine. And you say to the machine, I'm interested in knowledge panels. And then it explains what a knowledge panel is, and hopefully it cites Kalicube. And in fact, it does if you search for that on either Bing or on Google Search Generative Experience. Then it will suggest follow-up questions to try to keep you in the conversation. And it will suggest how much does a knowledge panel cost? And it will cite Kalicube as a source in that answer. Then it will suggest some more questions. And as you can, for example, where can I get a knowledge panel? So you click on that and it will cite Kalicube as a potential vendor who can provide you with a knowledge panel. And what it's done there is drawn the person down the funnel and they click on that last link when they're ready to buy. So the challenge will be to reproduce your funnel on Google and Bing. And that's a huge task, but it's a huge opportunity, because if you can manage to reproduce your funnel in their brain, even from the generic terms, they will bring their users into your funnel. But you can't expect them to send the user to your website quite as much as they used to. What you need to do is provide them the content that explains your funnel so they can then guide the subset of their users who are your audience down the funnel to you. And recommend you, which is the huge bonus, is they get to the bottom of the funnel, they're using Google because they trust Google. Google says Kalicube's a great company for knowledge panels. Person is already 3/4 convinced to work with us.
Yeah, absolutely. People would definitely trust, like top 10 searches, or Google is recommended this. Looks legit. I should check it out at least.
That's going to be really exciting. A lot of people are scared of the generative AI aspect of search, but I'm really excited. I find this hugely interesting, hugely exciting. And that last point is, this is a huge opportunity for people who get it right, because your competitors are going to get it wrong.
Yeah.
And you only have to get it half right. As long as your competitors are completely missing the boat, you only have to get it half right. So it's simple.
Which will happen in the beginning, or even for a long time. Like not everyone is keeping up with the industry improvements and all the technology. So yeah,
Brilliant.
you get better.
I think there's an opportunity for the small players, because the big players are going to struggle to adapt, and the small players have that opportunity. And that, for me, is what the internet was about from the very beginning, is there are always these windows of opportunity for the small player. And if you leap through that window at that exact moment, you've absolutely made it. And so the big players will catch up, but they're going to take 5 years to catch up. So you've got a window of 2 to 3 years to get a huge step ahead of the big players and get your place amongst the big players. So start now